All right, we'll call to order the City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission Joint Plan Development Workshop agenda for Monday, November the 18th, 2024 at 4:00 p.m. With that, roll call and certification of quorum. Madam Secretary, I'll certify the council has a quorum. All members are present with the exception of Koza, Tuman, and Patel. Patel will be here shortly. He did text me he's running about 15 minutes late. Mr. Tuman will miss this meeting, will be at our 6:30 meeting, and Mr. Koza is out of town due to a wedding for his daughter. So with that, we'll turn it over to the commission. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Your Honor. Certifying quorum, we have all members present, less, except for Ms. Jennifer Ordino. She changed her name, I get that. Thank you.
That it? All right. With that, we'll move to citizens' comments. I believe we have, is it one? We have two. Mayor Pro Tem, if you'll introduce those. You go to the podium, you'll give your name and address for the record. I believe up on the screens, we should have a clock that gives you 3 minutes to speak.
All right. First up, as I received him, Mr. Jeff Potts. Thank you for being here. If you give us your name and address for the purpose of the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Sure. My name is Jeff Potts, 1801 Adamo Lane, Pearland, Texas, 77581. And I'm here on the 8210 McCard workshop. I live on the street next to it, and I represent the neighborhood. I've lived in Pearland since 1994, the last 30 years. My wife is an Armbruster. They've been here since the 60s. We've seen a lot of change in Pearland. We're not against development. We are in favor of the right kind of development. And the proposal for a 100+ unit, high density, no amenity apartment complex at the end of our street is a ridiculous development option, and the neighborhood is against it. I think most of you have probably received emails in the last week about that. I also handed out just before this a handout to kind of help structure my comments, and so I hope you all have that in front of you. The property is there in pink, the $2.5 million under contract to the developer. Apparently the developer doesn't want to close until he knows you'll change the variances for his benefit. It was SR 12 before the developer tried to buy it. It is still SR 12. It should remain SR 12 or large single family home properties. There is no need for an apartment complex, particularly that type of high density complex in that area. If you look just to the north and west there, the townhomes at Lake Park, that project is large. It has vacancies. I called this morning. They would have rented me a 1, 2, or 3 bedroom townhome. It's also been allowed. Am I over my 3 minutes?
No, the clock's not working.
Oh.
I was asking what was going on. You're good, Mr. Potts.
Okay.
Keep rolling.
All right, I'll keep rolling. You just cut me off when you get tired of listening. The townhomes at Lake Park, when they were approved by this, had the same developer. If Mr. Alamond is here, I assume he's here somewhere. He was part of that project. It could have been expanded. Don't know why it hasn't been expanded. I'm guessing because there's no need for additional apartments. It could have expanded both to the east and the south there past that water retention you see on the map. So there doesn't appear to be a need for it. Even if there were a need, there's already properties, and there were properties at the time that they put this one under contract that would be much more appropriate. The 8.7 acres there south on Cullen across from the Silver Lake Church is 0.6 acres larger, and it's $300,000 less, and it's unzoned. It's in a multifamily commercial area. There's plenty of properties around if there was a need that it could be built on. I'm not going to take the time, and I'm probably getting close to my 3 minutes, to talk about all of the deficiencies under the Unified Development Code with the proposal they sent in. Suffice it to say, our independent PE consultant can go over those with staff if we need to, but the City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission should reject any variances for this property. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Mr. Potts. Next up, David Lay. Same instructions, give us your name and address for the purpose of the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes, and thank you for being here.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. My name is David Lay. My address is 838 Coolman Road, Houston, Texas. I am here in regards to agenda item number 2. My family has owned 8 acres of property in the city of Pearland for over 60 years, and along with Lucas Cowan's family, the Martinis, they own the 32 acres behind us. And then Mike Rose's group, he's been a taxpayer probably for 20 plus years. And I just wanted to get up before our meeting time and just give you a little bit of a background of the property and where we've been with it and kind of what we are looking forward to and hoping that we can find some kind of win-win situation. Again, we have been, I hope we've been good stewards of the land and good taxpayers now for a long time. And this is not like a situation where it seems like developers come into your city and put properties under contract and come here and say, we want all of this. Please change everything that you've done for us to make this project happen. That's not us. We've been here. We've been paying the taxes. All we want is for you guys to take a look at our project. We're not trying to cause economic harm to the city of Pearland. We're not trying to negate anybody's quality of life. We think we can enhance it, enhance the tax base, create jobs, take a piece of property that's pretty much a mosquito pit right now and turn it into a nice project that will coexist with whatever development you have next door. And I think we can do that. It's happening, all over town where you have different uses coexisting with one another. This is also could be a good opportunity and a good time to kind of look at some of the zoning that has been put in place. When we've been here for a long time, and when the Spectrum HUD overlaid their use restrictions and zoning on this property, we were all for. I mean, we were like, you remember, this was going to be the Dano corridor, and this was going to be technology and research and medical, kind of the new medical center, down here, which was great. But over time, things have evolved, the market's evolved. And so what is the market now, 30 years after the Spectrum PUD restrictions were put in place, is totally different. Just like any deed restrictions you see on houses that are 100 years old or 80 or 60, deed restrictions in markets evolve. So I would just have y'all consider what the market is right now. And I am a retail developer. There's nothing more that I would like to do on that 8 acres of frontage that we own next to the Bass Pro Shops than develop a high-end, retail restaurant type of development. But that is not the market. If it was, I'd do it. I wouldn't be teaming up with a light industrial guy, developer to do a light industrial project. The retail is more to the south. That's where the homes are and the incomes and more of the growth. So I think after you hear our presentation that there's a win-win where whatever concerns y'all have over what kind of project we're going to try to do, we can hope resolve them all, and I think we can figure out a way where we can monetize and develop and put our property that we've had for 60 years in the city of Pearland into development while protecting all the best interest of your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lay. Good historical perspective on that. Is that all of our comments? All right. With that, we'll move to the first proposed purpose of the workshop. Discussion requesting by Andrew Allman, Beacon Land Services LLC, applicant on behalf of BEGP1 LLC. This is on the, generally located on at 8210 McCard Road, Pearland, Texas. With that, we'll open with staff comments and report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. This meeting is required by the UDC prior to being permitted to formally submit a plan development zoning request. The workshop is meant to gather feedback on the proposal and selected base zoning. This property is located along the south side of McCard Road, east of Cullen Parkway. This property is zoned Suburban Residential 12 and within the Corridor Overlay District. To the north, south, east, and west, all have portions of Suburban Residential 12 zoning. Additionally, across McCard Road is zoned Residential Estate, and a portion of the western property line is zoned Cullen Mixed Use District. Adjacent land uses are single-family homes, undeveloped land, and a boat repair shop. The future land use plan has this property designated as urban living. And on the screen is the applicant's proposed site plan. To the north, we have McCard Road, and to the east, we have Adamo Lane. On the plan, the applicant is proposing 101 three-bedroom units along with the clubhouse, amenity areas, on-site detention with guest and resident parking. The future residents will be encouraged to use their designated garage space as parking. There is an internal sidewalk connection within portions of the property, and this property will be gated with one access point along McCard Road. These renderings were received by staff this morning and were not included in your packet or posted online, but we wanted to show them. In the applicant's letter of intent, a desired base zoning of multifamily residential district has been selected. On the screen are the applicant's proposed deviations from the multifamily zoning district and the corridor overlay district requirements. Staff will briefly go over each deviation and allow the applicant to discuss them further in their presentation if they wish. On the left side of the screen are the proposed parking deviations. For three-bedroom units, the requirement is one space per bedroom, one for 300 for the leasing office and the clubhouse. And the clubhouse parking requirement is missing from this parking table. However, an estimated clubhouse square footage of 4,000 square feet was noted on their site plan. A rough estimate would calculate 317 spaces are required for this development. The proposed parking table shows 269 spaces with 67 surface spaces, 21 of those spaces being outside of the proposed gates and 46 being inside. 101 garages that will park 2 cars, totaling 202 spaces. This development is a minimum of 48 spaces short of meeting the parking requirements per the UDC. And on the right side of the screen are site-specific deviations. The applicant is proposing to increase the allowed lot coverage by 21%, increase the distance from a dwelling unit to common open space, reduce the size of required setbacks, reduce facade requirements, and reduce landscape buffers. The proposed deviations on the right side of the screen in the previous slide noted extra letters or numbers on some of the line items. The text is small, but we felt like the notes were important to provide additional context. For example, looking at the parking, maneuvering, and loading line, current corridor overlay district requirement is 30 feet, with the number 7 in the corner. The number 7 notes the UDC standard requirement. However, under the new regulation column, it notes 20-foot setback, with a letter B in the corner. Letter B states, does not apply to properties along the northern and western property lines currently used as commercial. To staff, this reads that there is a 0-foot parking buffer requirement adjacent to McCard Road or the western property line. This table is somewhat misleading with the negotiated standards note section. Discussion on proposed deviations. Open space. The site plan being shown tonight is not a complete design plan, and with that, staff will require additional information regarding the open space plan that provides additional calculations and locations. As per the UDC, 900 square feet of common open space per unit with minimum dimensions is required. And providing easy to access open space is important for a resident's quality of life, and increasing the required distance for them to access that common open space is not supported by staff. Setbacks. Staff is not in favor of the reduction in setbacks for parking and fencing along McCard Road. McCard Road is within the Corridor Overlay District. Most of our major thoroughfares have this overlay in addition to the property's base zoning. The Corridor Overlay District is intended to help the city exercise greater control over the aesthetic, functional, and safety characteristics of development along major thoroughfares. Higher development standards can effectively enhance the city's image as a desirable place to live, work, and shop. Staff is not supportive of modifying the requirements along McCard Road. Additionally, the applicant's site plan notes along the southern property line a proposed barbed wire fence. Barbed wire fencing is a prohibited fencing material in the Corridor Overlay District, except for controlling livestock. And this deviation from the UDC would be required to be added to their deviations table. Lot coverage. Staff is not supportive of an increased lot coverage allowance from 40 to 61%. Staff believes that if the lot coverage is not increased by 21%, the applicant would be able to meet the 300-foot distance requirement for residents to access common open space within the property. Landscaping. Staff is not supportive of reducing the landscape buffer requirements. The deviation notes a 25-foot landscape buffer is not required on the northern or western property line. As mentioned in the setback section, staff is not supportive of reducing the corridor overlay distance requirements along the newly opened McCard Road. We are supportive of the applicant keeping a 25-foot buffer along the southern and eastern portions of the property, as single-family homeowners live along Adamo Road, and this is an appropriate buffer to provide. Building facade standards. Staff is not supportive of reducing the exterior building facade design standards noted in the UDC. Within the Corridor Overlay District, a minimum of 25% of an exterior wall facing the specified thoroughfare shall be transparent. And within the exterior building design requirement, a minimum exterior wall standard shall be 100% masonry or glass. These standards shall apply to any wall or portion visible from the roadway, abutting residential zoning districts. And as previously stated, McCard Road being recently completed, staff is not supportive of deviating from the UDC requirements. The deviations table is incomplete, as there appears to be additional deviations the applicant would need to request with this plan development. Adding the noted deviations are somewhat misleading with the negotiated standards notes section. If the applicant moves forward with the formal application, the deviations must be clearly noted and applied to their design plan to avoid any confusion. Finally, staff would like to make a comment that public notification is not required for PD workshops. However, we received several emails in opposition to this request. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Is the applicant present? You have a presentation for us?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we do. Thank you for having us. My name's Andrew Allemond. I'm not the developer. I did help with the application across the street. I know that was mentioned earlier, and you guys probably remember me. We did help the developer, Mr. Johnson, kind of get that project back on track and get him to the finish line, essentially. But I work for Beacon Land Services. I'm a professional services guy, and so we help people write zoning applications and get them before you. And so I'm not the developer, but we do have the developer here, along with some other folks from our development team, the engineer and the architect. And I think staff did a pretty good job of outlining where the project is and on a high altitude what we plan on doing. Of course, this is the aerial of the site. It's obviously at the southwest corner of McCard and Adamo. I think some of the comments from the owner nearby, the person in the notification buffer when it actually does go out, I think this is the gentleman who lives to the south, who we did approach early on in the process just to let him kind of know what was going on. This would definitely not be appropriate for a high-density apartment complex. It is along McCard. McCard is a thoroughfare, and that does kind of lead to a different type of development. Obviously, there's mixed uses, the boat repair shop, other commercial uses along McCard. But this did require something else other than an apartment complex. And that's why we went with the townhome style development. And this is like a first blush effort for us. This is a first step forward to kind of show you what we plan on doing. Staff has been very helpful in kind of getting us, just started and kind of down the road. And obviously things are going to change from this point forward as we go through the formal process. But for right now, this is a street view. This is the survey. I think the comment about the barbed wire fence, that's what's there right now. There's a barbed wire fence in some portions. We're definitely not proposing a barbed wire fence along the south property line. It'll be, a full fence like any other part of the development. So on the 7.9 acres, we're proposing a build-to-rent complex in a townhome style. The density is only 12.7 dwelling units per acre. It's almost 8 acres, and we're only putting in 100 units. It's not a high density. Obviously, the development to the north is a higher density than that, and there's other commercial uses mixed in as well. But again, where we're at in the world, given that we're doing, a PD next to some existing residential, it's just a better land use. We don't need the higher density that you'd see in other parts of the world, but it is a good transition zoning from the south side, west side of Adamo up to the McCard complex. Each one of the units will be priced at around $2,200, $2,350, depending on when we get online, when the market goes live, if we can make it forward with the project. And these are all 3-bedroom dwelling units, ground entry level, park in your own dwelling unit, walk into your house, walk into your residence. And so each one has a 2-car garage, so it's definitely a different feel than a traditional apartment complex. It'll look and feel like in the real world more like a townhome development. So this is the site plan. I know staff went over it and included some of the deviations we're looking for. The amenitized clubhouse and all the stuff around there is shown here on the north side of the site. Units are kind of wrapped around the east, south, and west. The reason for the 0-foot setbacks on the west and where the boat area is, you see we don't have any dwelling units there, but we need to put the detention pond along that west side for the maintenance area and just to kind of get the capacity that we need. And then we have the vegetative buffer along the south. And again, some of these numbers obviously are going to be massaged over time, but this is generally what we're proposing to get the type of return that we need to get to make the project justifiable. And this is something that we talked about. We haven't brought it up with staff yet, but one of the things that we do in some of our other developments, Core 3 being the developer here, and then obviously, through other developments throughout, the greater, Pearland area, you'll see some parking allowed in front of the garages where the well is deep enough to actually put a car. On that right-hand side where the yellow outlined area is, we'll be proposing to count those as parking spaces as well as part of our deviation set. And with those numbers included, we should be right at or pretty close to the capacity that we need for the parking. And that'll hopefully get us some resolution on the parking front. The amenitized area will include a clubhouse, landscaping, of course, guest parking, and a gym. The little tennis court looking thing is actually a pickleball court. It's not a tennis court. I heard that from one of the folks that contacted me. And of course, we'll have a swimming pool, a walking trail, and some benches, mainly focused around the clubhouse. And that was the idea for the variance in terms of the open space. The way the language is written, it says that all open space has to be within X number of feet. As you can kind of see here with those green belts, the one that runs east-west between the main east-west block of buildings, there is open space within easy access to every dwelling unit. It's just that the clubhouse itself is a given distance away. That's where the distance modification would come from. But every dwelling unit in the development will have easy and ready access to open space. And again, staff, we sent them the renderings this morning, but this is kind of what the units are proposed to look like. It's a more modern style. The color scheme, the way they're kind of built, it's not like old, like 1990s, 2000s era brick, but this is the facade treatment that we're looking for. And if that needs to change, I think we're obviously flexible to that, but this is kind of, again, a first blush option, given that the developer has done lots of these types of projects before and they're looking for a more modern type of product. So this is the elevation set. A list of deviations. I think staff did a really good job at going over what we're planning for, but we're not asking for much, but we are asking for consideration in terms of buffering against the boat area, the boat shop, and then for the detention pond. Obviously, how we deal with McCard is going to be finessed a little bit, like making sure that staff is good with where we put the fence, where we put the drive aisles and the parking areas. That, in terms of McCard, that's going to have to be discussed at greater length, and we're definitely willing to do that. But in terms of like an overall deviation set, I've written tons of plan developments in various jurisdictions. This is not a ton of deviations. Really what you get from a plan unit development is control over the aesthetic and control over the product as it goes forward. Obviously, you don't want to grant a multifamily zoning here. Just as a generic allowance, it wouldn't be appropriate. So the plan development, even if there was no deviations listed, would be the right thing to do because it would lock the developer into that site plan. It wouldn't be an open-ended zoning that anybody could put an apartment complex there ad infinitum into the future. So it's a good way for the developer and the neighborhood to kind of come to a consensus position on what's the right type of development and lock it in place. Obviously, Pearland's done a really great job of doing a bunch of these. One of the best jurisdictions out there that allows these to go forward because it does give the city more control and then us a greater ability to put the right thing in place. So if you have any questions of me, again, I'm just the applicant. I'm a land development consultant, not a developer, the architect and the engineer here. We're definitely willing to answer any questions you have or take information or feedback that you have and then work with staff going into the future to get a good development in place.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Allman. And we'll be opening up to both the P&Z and to the council for comments, questions, concerns. I guess before we do, to staff, if they are proposing, and I don't have the UDC in front of me, so help me. If they're proposing townhomes, why isn't the base zoning for the PD townhome, not multifamily, number one? Well, go ahead and answer that question first, and then I'll have a follow-up to that.
Sure. With townhome zoning, they require each unit to be on their own lot. And so with this development is more of a multifamily product, being one lot is proposed.
Because he's doing the build to rent.
Right, and it's one large lot instead of individual lots for each unit.
All right, thank you for that. Because I would say from a build to rent standpoint, I would prefer a one reserve, one lot, not individual, because an exit strategy would be keeping that in institutional control, one owner versus splitting this thing up into 101. Having said that, townhome development in Pearland is generally 7 units to the acre, not 12. So if we're going to do townhome development, you're looking at 7 units to the acre, not 12. And on your net acreage, you're at 15. So this, for a townhome development, this is almost double what would be allowed as a normal townhome development. So it is very dense for a townhome type development. And I understand you're trying to thread a needle in using a rental product to come in here. One thing that I think is important that maybe the Planning and Zoning Commission, along with staff, and if council wants to be a part of this, I don't think this necessarily needs to be part of the rewrite and update of the UDC. But I've talked about, now that McCard is open, we need to have a whole look at McCard from the traffic circle all the way to the freeway, so we understand what that's going to look like. I know we've done some very high level look at that during the comprehensive plan update, but I think more of a deep dive. So we give the residents, like the folks on Adamo, what is it going to look like in the future? There are these types of tracks along the way, and I think giving developers a look at how and what are we looking for, along that way. I do think a higher dense product along the corridor is probably going to be something of the norm. I think this is way over the case. I think it's way too dense. I think the parking will be a nightmare inside the complex itself, on a personal note. And so I think this is going to be a hard lift to get there. With that, I'll throw it open to council for questions and comments.
Mayor, I had 2 questions. Slide 9, can we talk about slide 9 just for a second? Slide 9, I think it's slide 9. Forgot my iPad, so, well, it was in charge, I didn't really, yeah. I think that's, no, this is slide 9 right here. Can you just go through this one again real quick? It says it's the future land use plan, but it's just talking about the urban living place type?
That's correct. This is urban living place type, and this land use is intended to provide a range of housing choices with variations in density. So primary land uses, townhomes, duplexes, patio homes, apartment, live-work units, with secondary uses being civic and institutional uses, schools, parks, neighborhood serving commercial.
So part of what we're trying to say here is that the place type is correct, or staff believes that the place type is correct, and that the type of development may also be correct. It's just that the density that is being provided is not a density that we would look towards.
So we're calling them townhomes, or they're being called townhomes, maybe because it sounds better, or?
A lot of people say townhomes when a townhome is an attached product.
Thank you.
Real quick, let me go to the Planning and Zoning Commission first. Usually I go to them first and then to council. So let me keep with that normal order of business, Mr. Chair. No, that's my fault. I started down this path, so I'll take the hit for that. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Eccles, you want to start off? We'll just go right to left.
It is troubling for 101. The number's interesting. 101 units on this parcel. Number one, it limits your parking, as staff has already told us. The development already doesn't have enough parking, and this is just something that I'm having difficulty swallowing, to put a quote-unquote townhome apartment complex, if you will, just for rent, in an area where it's going to be highly dense, no parking, and it's going to be a nightmare. So I'm struggling with that.
Good morning, council. So if I understand correctly, we have a multiple use scenario or land type that was chosen, but we're choosing, I think it's been said, we're choosing the townhome type, but then we're applying, or what is being applied is somewhat of an apartment style density. And I think, Mary, you hit the nail on the head. We're threading a needle, but I think what's being done is we're picking and choosing what levels of effort and applications go along with that to suit the development. If I lived here, you have parking, albeit it might end up being right on or very close to once they make some adjustments, but it's all in one location. It's not scattered throughout, like apartments generally are. But you have the density of apartment complex. You have the look and feel of townhomes, but again, you don't have any adjacent parking to sections of the townhomes. The amenities are not very centralized. So it doesn't really fit, and maybe that is something for the UDC rewrite as well, that if we're choosing this type of land plan to develop on, and we choose a quote unquote type or a subtype that they would mirror or try to push through on that type of land plan, maybe we should have some subsequent guidelines or paths to follow such that it more mirrors those in a generic type of setting. But no, I don't. And Mayor, I tend to agree with you too. If a corridor is finally open, as McCard now is, and you've got light industrial commercial on one end and semi-residential of some kind on the other, how do you transition from one to the other as you go through the corridor? I absolutely agree. And lastly, I've always maintained, and when I did this, these types of reviews, that if the property is not economically developable for that type of development that you want to choose, then it needs to be something else. We don't need to be bending over and circumventing all of our requirements just to make it fit.
Thank you. Obviously, planned developments have a very important place in our community, and this isn't necessarily a place where PD isn't usable and workable as a solution. But I believe the basis of a planned development is we give you certain allowances and you bring in something special or above or enhance the community as a whole, and I don't see that here, right? As you know from my experience here, I'm a supporter of a wide range of housing types, but I think they have to work in their layout and their process and how they're developed. And I just don't see, for what they're asking for and what they're trying to do here, that it's a beneficial addition to our community. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm gonna be more in favor of something that's not built to rent and something that's less dense. Just a different variety of housing type that people can invest their money in, grow wealth and income. Everybody knows when you buy your first home that you start to grow your wealth, and I just don't see that, and I would like to see more of that type of product. I think we've seen a lot of apartment housing, really nice apartment housing, but this just doesn't do it. I don't know if that would work for this track because it's kind of small, but I guess I'm just not in favor of this.
I kind of feel the same way as Commissioner Hendricks. You know, you'd sit there and you make it look like a townhome, but it's like putting lipstick on a pig. It's still an apartment. The density of it is just, it's overwhelming. I agree with my fellow commissioners that the parking will be a nightmare. You know, it's just not the right place or the right product for their. Listening to staff's presentation when they gave it to us, it was just a whole array of what they didn't meet in concern to the UDC. If we're going to have a UDC, there's sometimes that I think there's probably that we vote against the UDC, but this is not one of those times.
Thank you all. For me, and I'd like to address the citizen comment. One of the things that was stated in that citizen comment is that the multifamily could be expanded to the east and south. I find that to be false.
He's referring to the development at the corner above
100%.
Northwest.
Yes, sir. That Mr. Johnson brought in years ago. The east and to the south, those parcels, or the available land there was supposed to be commercial, and that's why we gave him or in my opinion, why some of the votes were given to him was that he was going to do some commercial development there, and the apartments were going to be an afterthought. Well, we see what happened. So I just wanted to make that clear. A second thing, 100 units or really close to 100 units, that's ideal for the BTRs to be repurchased or sold to the next owner. It's if you look around town, if you see some of the ones that have been built and sold, they're typically around 100 units, anywhere from 80 to 120, 130. They get too big, it's a little difficult for that for the sale, And if they're too small, the institutions aren't willing to purchase something that small. As for the parcel itself, it's an odd-shaped parcel, limited frontage. It is a difficult parcel. I passed it up on my way to work every day for a couple of years before I moved locations, and I had my eye on that parcel, and I called on it. It's priced for this type of use. It's not priced for single family. You're never going to get a large lot single family to go there. I don't believe it's economically viable for that. Again, I think one of the commissioners stated, or somebody else stated, that doesn't make it for this use only. Sometimes the owner has to reconsider his value or the value he's placing on that property. So it is a challenging parcel. The comp plan discussions that we had, we have a new comprehensive plan. We discussed these parcels along McHard, but briefly. I wish we'd had more time, as the mayor suggested, and I agree 100%. We need to have a planning session instead of a zoning session, but a think tank session for a new road. And anytime a new road gets built, or maybe even rebuilt and utilities come in, we should have that planning meeting, I believe, to give council some fodder, for lack of a better word, some thoughts for that road, the new road, the new parcels along those roads, and maybe even have some zoning sessions to go with it. But we did discuss it during that comp plan revision, and the urban consideration was given. The higher density was given to some of these parcels along here, but I just don't know if this is the right one, and I'm hearing from my fellow commissioners that no, it is not. It's going to be developed at some point, but what does that look like? I think that's our discussion today. So those are my thoughts.
All right. Now we'll turn to council. Thank you, Commission. Ms. Cade got a question in. Anybody else have a question? Mr. Byram?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a couple of questions from the public comments, and you don't necessarily need to be able to answer this now if you could get back to me on it. The zoning to the west of Cullen, was that accurate? I mean, it's not in our map, but where they talked about their zoning on the other side of Cullen that's actually zoned for multifamily?
The current zoning, or?
No, it was from the public comments that the information that they gave us. They said that this side over here has zoning that this would actually fit in.
Have y'all seen this? I believe we have a parcel that's unzoned in our city. So.
Yeah, I would just be curious to see if any of that information is accurate. If y'all could, I gave it to Vance. He's going to pass it down. So that would be information I think would be good to know, because if you do have a parcel right around the corner that's zoned for what you're asking for, then why do we need to go through the motions of rezoning a different piece of property right down the street? I think that's something worth considering. In the future land use plan that Planning and Zoning Commission mentioned, it's showing this is mixed use. It's showing across the street as compact residential. Under our current land use or zoning for that area, this is called, that's SR12, and across the street is RE, which is half-acre lots. So our current plan has this piece of property, 12,000 square foot lots, and across the street is half-acre lots, and we're looking to change to small residential and multifamily. So I was curious what the reasoning was behind a pretty significant change for that area. If you live over there and you've lived there for decades, that's a very dramatic change to the area around you. So I'm curious what our thought process was on these changes. Anybody can enlighten me on that?
Thank you, Councilmember Byram, for giving us an opportunity to talk about this map some more.
Yeah.
So I believe that the note that is on there is kind of confusing some initials. So the property that is across Cullen, actually up and down Cullen, there is zoning that says C-MU, That C-MU stands for Cullen Mixed Use. What I believe they were seeing that as was commercial multifamily, and that's where the MU was getting transitioned. So Cullen Mixed Use does not allow for apartments or multifamily development. And that property at the corner of Hawk Road and Cullen is in Cullen Mixed Use. So that's an incorrect notation. Again, not provided by staff, that was provided by the applicant, so just putting good information out there. Second, on the reason for zoning of the RE area versus the SR12. First of all, I was not here whenever that zoning was assigned, but I will say that portions of that area were likely zoned that way due to existing utilities or planned for utilities. So areas north of McCard Road don't have a plan for utilities, so therefore the larger lot was seen as probably the better standard for that area, whereas the SR12 area is broadly defined for all properties south of McCard. And I'm being very large paintbrush there, but I had to walk through some base understanding of potentially why zoning was assigned in a certain way. That would be my logical guess.
Thank you. I appreciate the input on that, and as well as on the CMU. I will say that I like the dynamic that we have where we have a planning and zoning committee, we have council, we work together, try to figure things out. There are situations where we may disagree, or there may be something that is particularly compelling where council would change the decision of planning and zoning. I don't really see anything in this proposal that would compel me to say I disagree with planning and zoning. So I'm on the same page with you guys.
Ms. Chavarria?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you so much for the presentation. I just want to say that I am not in favor of this project. I think that this project does not fit the parcel, so I am definitely not in favor.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I would agree. Density is probably the biggest issue. Parking, open space. So I think staff got it right. P&Z got it right. It's up to the developer. If you want to hear us and try to come back again, you can. But I think it's pretty consistent. Density is probably the biggest issue.
Yep. I was going to follow up. One entry, I don't see a secondary entrance. Just it's a site map, it's zoning, and then UDC requirements are totally separate, but that's all I see here. I will say this, maybe it's the right project, wrong tract of land. Typically, again, townhomes in Pearland have an attached product that's 3 or 4 units max. These are upwards of 7 and 8. So again, it doesn't meet it from that perspective. And again, maybe that's our nuances in our own UDC and trying to fit a B2R type thing. B2R is a known quantity in our real estate areas now. But I'll go back and say this might be the right product. It's just the wrong place for it. Ms. Chavarria, I think that's what you were trying to say there. I'm not a big fan of the look. It might work in other areas. I'm not sure that it works here. I'll go back. Looks like the detention is just that. It's a hole in the ground. I don't see amenitization. I don't see how it's incorporated in with the rest of the development. The way this looks to me is it's even going to be vertical down, and you're trying to save space. That worries me. It worries me about maintenance. It worries me about anything after the developer is gone, how that's going to be. Be nice. A lot of people have been very successful at putting detention and bringing it through the development and amenitizing it with water, those types of things. So I think there's a lot of work to do on this if it was to come back. I think you're getting the sense that we don't like this look, but the ball is being shoved back to your court. It's up to you guys how you want to proceed. Do you want to come back with a different product or different look, different feel? You've gotten our comments tonight, and I hope you've got some direction along those lines. With that, I'll kick back to staff. Any last follow-up comments?
One last thing that I want to mention while I've got everyone's time. This application does have a set of shared driveway, fire lanes, parking areas that are poorly designed and will introduce a lot of conflict points. So just want to make sure that that is something that is echoed from our staff report and duly brought to the applicant's attention.
Well, and I understand coming in off of McCard Road, but you don't have a median crossing. You're right at a corner, and not to introduce it to Adamo Lane, but seems like it'd be safer to try to go back to the west rather than a U-turn. So there's a lot of conflicts with this land plan, the way it's in its current. Got a last call? Okay.
I also wanted to echo Commissioner Eisenberg. If we have a UDC, I would rather see a project that doesn't have a list of variances from the UDC to be able to get it done. It's something that works within the plan that we have.
Okay.
One more thing. I can't imagine this fitting anywhere in Pearland. I think it's the wrong spot and it's in the wrong city if this is what they want to deliver.
So with that, I'm going to close this workshop, open up the next workshop. Discussion request by Peter Billup, Skyhawk Partners, specifically at southwest corner of South Sam Houston Parkway and Promenade Shops Drive in Pearland, Texas. With that, I'll kick to staff to open up.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the intro on this. Just to set the stage real quickly, you're going to hear a lot about compatibility with this discussion. This is to add just shy of 40 acres of land into the existing LNR Clear Creek Spectrum development. The request is to add this property in as District B, which is the Mixed Use Technology District. And as we all know, these workshops are kind of the first step in a requirement to add in property for a planned development. And with this being a rather large change in deviation from the existing S1 zoning, we wanted to bring forward this simply to get the quick answer on, is this the right space and is this the right type of use for this property? And again, through the compatibility discussion, I think we'll hopefully come to a similar conclusion. Taking a look at the properties and surrounding zoning and uses, you've got properties that are outside of the city, just to the north. You've got Spectrum District in the S2 and S1 to the south, along with some city-owned property. Then to the east, you've got the Promenade Shops planned development, which has the Bass Pro, and we've seen mixed-use catalyst sites being proposed for that in the not-too-distant past. And then to the west, you have the entirety of the LNR Clear Creek Spectrum plan development. So this is kind of the first look at their proposal. You can see it's 4 buildings with just over 1 million, just over 500,000 square foot, at $500,000 mark in warehousing and distribution. One of the main deviations that they are asking for is to allow off-site parking by right within this development. They're limited on numbers of deviations simply because the LNR plan development bakes in so many deviations as it's an existing plan development. So know that District B allows additional rights. That District B allows additional standards for roadways and for parking and for it's a complete change in character from District A. So talking about and through the deviations, Their current plan does not indicate where that offsite parking would be located. And with that, we really need to define what parking means to this planned development and throughout the LNR Clear Creek development itself. So I've talked an awful lot about LNR. LNR, as it originally existed, had three districts to itself. District A was for property that was along the Beltway. That was the Beltway district. District B is the mixed use technology district. That's for properties that are generally south of the Beltway district and then east of Kirby Drive. And then District C is the mixed use industrial district. What the applicant is proposing to do is to take this new property, which is just off of the screen, to District B. But really and truly, District B allows for that warehouse and distribution, but it's a very intense use within the warehouse, within the District B proposal. So while District B is compatible with the zoning of the property to the southwest, it is not compatible with properties to the southeast and northwest. Allowing this property to come forward and to have heavy truck traffic and establish these warehouses and development, it will significantly impact the city's ability to attract a desirable mixed-use development adjacent to this property. So therefore, it is not a compatible use with the plans that are in place to have that high-quality development. So talking more about the Lower Kirby Master Plan, that master plan lays out some character districts. The first of which is for this property is the Highway Commercial Character District. It is intended for regional scale retail and primary employment, and that is consistent with District A of the LNR Clear Creek spectrum. So leaving it back to council, one of the questions that I would suggest asking is what quality is being enhanced to allow for this significant increase in intensity of allowed uses, as going from a highway retail mall-like setting where you would hope that people get out of their cars and have a pedestrian experience in a quality development versus having a warehouse and distribution facility directly across the street. With that, Mayor, I'll pass it back to you.
Is Mr. Billup here? All right. You have a presentation? Thank you for being here tonight. Make sure you give us your name and address for the record, just to have it there, and proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate Mr. Griggs' comments there and intro. My name is Peter Billup. I live at 3601 Plum Street. That's Houston, Texas, 77005. So we're here. We've had two good prelim discussions with staff earlier this year that led us, as Mr. Griggs said, to go ahead and come in and present to the workshop with the council and P&Z. And really at the core of what, the most fundamental aspect of our request tonight is trying to see if the city would support a change of the uses that are currently permissible adjacent or in the S1 district, in the Spectrum 1 district. Our request is, truly for a high quality type development. We're not looking to do something that's heavy industrial. Sure, truck traffic would be supportive of the type of projects we're doing, but currently, as David Lay mentioned initially, the permissible uses of retail, mall-like settings, Class A office even, they're just not in favor with the marketplace at this moment. So in addition to that, I'd say capital supply, debt and equity availability for projects, they're not in support of this type of project. So we're here to talk to you a little bit about what we do. I'm a light industrial developer. My company, Skyhawk Partners, I've done about 5.5 million square feet of industrial development across mainly the state of Texas. I've been fortunate to work with some of the biggest e-commerce companies, some of the biggest distribution type companies that are across the country and other markets, everywhere from Philadelphia all the way over to Phoenix. So as it relates to use and where we're going and what we're here to talk to you about, I don't know the Pearland zoning ordinance, ad nauseum or backwards and forwards. And obviously staff does, and we would be very supportive of working cooperatively with the city to come up with a development plan that is acceptable and attractive and in desire by both the marketplace and the city itself. Let's see, our team, I just want to introduce Mark Whitty real quickly. He and I have been development partners for a number of years. Collectively, I think we have about 60-ish years of development experience between the two of us. Let's see, we've got Powers Brown here as our architect. AJ Brunt, we've got, Powers Brown is one of the best commercial architects in the country, certainly very well known in the Houston community. So we're super excited to have them on our team. Trent Perez with Dunaway Civil Engineering. Trent's got history with the city, as most of you know, I'm sure. Trent's been a great advocate for this project and the process that we're going through. Next, we've got our landowners. So this whole conversation really started with me approaching the landowners to say, hey guys, as I've studied the market, I understand you've got this zoning in place, but as a industrial developer, I think your land site is a great opportunity for the community and for you as land investors, wanting to monetize your project or your land site. Let's see if we can go through this process. I've done, in the 5.5 million square feet of development that I've done, I've had, this is the third zoning change experience that I would be going through. Mark and I have successfully done this on 2 other projects, one in the city of Baytown and the other in the city of Wilmer and South Dallas. So we've got experience in this. We understand how it works. We understand this is a process. Very much so, we're intending this to be cooperative. Lastly, just to kind of address things before we hand it off to you all, I'd like to say, hey, I don't know, all the setbacks, all the particulars on, the finer details of what this project needs to be and why our use is permissible or attractive. We don't have it. We've got some pretty pictures of an elevation, I think, Mark, wherever that is. But what we're talking about is Class A, institutional quality, investment grade, highly sought after commercial real estate. Institutional investors, high credit tenancy. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll turn it over, is that most of these projects come out of the ground on a speculative basis. And the reason for that is because we don't know who the tenant's going to be. We don't know if it's going to be a medical manufacturer, a medical distributor. We don't know if it's going to be a huge e-commerce company. And yet the capital that will support us putting together a high quality design and going vertical and putting tax base on the tax rolls and creating jobs and creating commerce and economic development will let us go spec. And so are we gonna go spec? That's our game plan, is to go spec. If a great user company were to show up and say, hey, we're such and such, we want to be at this location, then we would certainly come back to you all and say, hey, wow, holy smokes, a light industrial type zoning has attracted this specific user. But for now, we're just trying to get past this very first step, which staff has led us to approach you all for, which is, hey, can the Spectrum 1 district zoning that's in place right now, that has sat, as David Lay mentioned, idle for decades, can we make a revision? Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll throw it open to Planning and Zoning Commission. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Your Honor. Shall we start again? Right to left?
My first look at this is just more infrastructure for imports, more infrastructure for such entities as Amazon, and you're going to have a lot of traffic in the area, and so my first indication is in that area to be having as much auto traffic as you have now to put truck traffic in there, I think will be a miss.
I would say my main concern would be the potential for development at the southwest corner of the Beltway and 288. I think we've looked at that. We've had a couple of options in that in the past that haven't come together, but I still think that's prime for some sort of mixed-use retail commercial development, and I think letting this go, this heavy industrial, limits the ability for that area to be developed and fully realized like we want. I think this is a transitional piece to kind of go from a more commercial, residential, mixed use to the east, to more of the industrial and technology to the west. And I would just hate for us to take a short-term gain with development that's, I mean, it seems like every mile of the Beltway has one of these now, right? Let's wait until I think it's prudent to wait and find something better that fits our community better. Thank you.
I think I wouldn't be opposed to this as long as, we made it look pretty good, like the other buildings that are there on the Beltway, and it would bring in definitely tax revenue, but I would definitely love to see more renderings, what it would look like. And I think that we could make it look good and hide some of the industrial look to it, and maybe show more what a city could do with that look. The industrial, like, I can see some of the products that you guys have architect look, and it looks really good, but I would love to see more renderings. That's all.
This piece of property is right there as you come into our city, and we spent a lot of money out there making the entrance to our city something kind of spectacular as you come into the city to kind of offset what the difference between coming from Houston into Pearland. I think having something that's so heavily industrialized is, number one, this is not what I've always had envisioned for that area out there. We've looked at several projects through my time on P&Z that, man, I really got excited about and stuff. I don't get excited about this whatsoever. The presenter even made the statement that it's kind of going to be just kind of straightforward spec right now. It might be a little bit more palatable if they brought in an end user that we could see what it was going to be like. But, I can't get excited about this.
I think for the Planning and Zoning Commission, we're charged with highest and best use. And I think the purpose of this hearing here is to determine if this use fits on this particular parcel without the applicant spending a lot of money. And it's funny that, ironic that Mr. Perez is here, former council member that always told that to me, that was the purpose of these meetings, to get a quick, cheap no or yes, spend some money and move through the process. So I appreciate their efforts and Trent's logic here, Mr. Perez's logic here. I would encourage, as the council members constantly encourage multifamily developers to meet with the HOA and get their feedback. I'd like to hear, because there's no notice criteria for a workshop. I can't say the name of the neighbor. Is it Indris? Thank you. that do they have any objection? You know, I think it's up to us to have something nice and nice looking. If they don't have any objection, if the Promenade Shops didn't have any objection, I wouldn't have any objection. From an appearance standpoint, my one concern though is that there's a lot of competition for this type use. I think you can look between 288 and Telephone Road on the north side of the Beltway, and there's a huge amount of acreage that was sold for this type use. And maybe there's a difference, maybe there's not. I know I say these things knowing full well that you have to get a market study, and you have to get approval from your financial institution to build one of these. And if they thought it was too much competition, they would tell you, no, thank you, not now. Come back 10 years from now when that place is fully leased up. So I know you'll have to go through that. So that being said, those were my comments.
All right, thank you for the commission. We'll open up to the council for questions, comments. This is the last major corner in our city to develop. My only concern is what has always been planned up until the TxDOT ditch. So from 288 over to the western edge of the subject property, you know, is more of your lifestyle look and feel. We've got Modern Green and the Ivy District coming out of the ground currently. My only concern is what does it do to the corner that Bass Pro is on and the rest of that development? And again, how do you face and how do you interface with those two, all of those kind of things? I know there are strategies that can be looked at how you do that, but that's my concern is we are moving away. And I know right now it'd be real easy. We could put spec buildings on the Promenade Shops property and we'd have buyers tomorrow, you know, in there. We know that, but we also know that's not the corner we want as you enter our city. And so with 1.5 million now, you'll put it at 2 million square feet in the immediate area. And there's another over 1 million in some form of planning stages that's not on this map yet. My concern is saturation and oversaturation of the market. And then where does that leave us? You're gone, institutional investors have it. Where does that leave us down the road? That's my biggest concern. So with that, I'll throw it open to questions and comments from council. Okay.
No, I like the way Daryl said it. It's not exciting, and for that to be right, like the front door to Pearland, I would like to be a little more exciting. And we've spent what seems like a lot of money on corridors and making things look nice when you enter Pearland. I would like for it to be a little bit more, you know.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think the challenge that I have with this type of project is and I think it's what you were alluding to, what was the plan for this area to begin with, and what's the impact of doing something like that there on the rest of that adjacent property right next door? That is, and if you go a little further down to Spectrum Boulevard, you've got the Ivy District. They have one apartment complex that's just now renting, that has retail space in it that the city required them to put in, that they're not able to fill. So to your comment about retail space, I understand a little bit of where you're coming from with that. But if we start putting more warehouse, these developments that were planned for that walkable living that I've heard talked about a lot, and having some of those retail places, some of those restaurants, do we kind of set that area up for failure if we keep doing that? So I struggle with that in that area. You mentioned debt and equity is not in favor of the type of project that this is zoned for right now. And this just for my own personal edification. I'm not in that world, but I frequently hear people come in and use the argument the market doesn't want to do what you want, but I don't ever nobody really ever brings anything that shows me what the market is saying other than their opinion. Does that make sense?
Yes.
From an uneducated person in the market, I'd like to see some information on that.
Yeah, I mean, and David is David Lay is a large format retail developer, and he could speak to that. I would say some of the easiest examples on that front are, I mean, you look at the mall type facilities around Greater Houston, Sharpstown Mall, Greens Point. They're all, I mean, they're in steady decline. I mean, they're falling apart. And it's, I mean, if it weren't for clauses within some of the leases that are maintaining those to stay open, the owners would have given the keys and walked away. You go walk around, I mean, just 5-10 years ago, I mean, I've been in the commercial real estate business for 25 years. 5-10 years ago, a Academy with a Bed Bath & Beyond and a Kohl's and a bunch of restaurant pads on the front was a slam dunk. And, I know you all have some of those in your city right now. In fact, on my way over here, I think I drove by the Pearland Commons or whatever it's called, and there's a nice chunk of available dirt right next to the Academy. And who's calling on that? Who wants to be in that space? I mean, e-commerce, I have some real experience with that. I mean, I'm not saying I don't have any guarantees of anything, but I'm just saying in today's day and age, from a consumer standpoint, e-commerce is so real. And as it relates, so as that's speaking to retail. As it relates to mixed use or office, Class A office, some of these other types of uses. I mean, obviously, office product is extremely challenged right now with demand from employers, want from employees, and so I get it very much so from the city standpoint. There's a vision, there's a desire, there's a want. I'm just saying that, I mean, to address the commissioner's point over there as it relates to having a tenant in hand, it would be great if we had a tenant in hand. Well, most of those tenants, those single tenant, great user companies, the first question they ask is, can we do this here? Are we allowed to do what we want to do here? We're going through the process because a light industrial zoning, it would actually qualify for a lot of good opportunities. It's not just, another one of those, industrial buildings that just is boring. It's the tenants inside of it, it's the user companies, it's the innovation, it's the employees, it's the tax base, it's the driving down the street to go to lunch, it's to go into the apartments. If you want to see some communities that are coexisting well with industrial and retail and office, and go to Frisco, Texas, go to Alliance, Texas. Go to Sugar Land. I mean, there are communities. I put together a light industrial memo for our second meeting that has 15 or 20 website links to it. If you spent 15 or 20 or 30 minutes and just played with all of those, you will see some unbelievable, potent economic development that's occurring in those formats. As it relates to traffic, if heavy industrial, I get it. If the Spectrum District is this vision, and you all don't want a bunch of tractor trailers, hauling through there with 53-foot trailers on the back, then limit us to Beltway 8 service road frontage, ingress egress. We won't touch Spectrum. We could literally take our design. Our design right now is so conceptual. All I can promise you is it will be Class A, it will be institutional quality, and it will attract high caliber tenants. Tenants that want to be in the Port of Houston, tenants, I mean, look at the state of Texas. All the inshoring, onshoring, nearshoring that's occurring in the state of Texas, Mexico, it's coming. It's here. It wants to be here more. So as it relates to truck traffic, we can solve that. We can solve that with our architectural design. As it relates to, I think the other comment was the infrastructure, the existing facilities. I mean, yeah, you all you put a bunch of money into this land out there already. You've got a stormwater drainage facility that we can utilize. Part of the reason why the industrial sites to the north of us were not wanting to go there, this site has full utilities. So power, gas, sanitary sewer, stormwater. These are hugely critical things in today's Houston Gulf Coast region of development. I mean, post-Harvey. So this is a site that, yeah, I mean, if you got this going, I mean, honestly, what happens at Bass Pro? We all know those owners, isn't it? Is it Prudential or Yeah, Prudential. How much light industrial does Prudential own across the country? I mean, so this could be the beginning of something. I'm here with those landowners because it's something that we can communicate and control. I'm not going to go try to assemble Prudential and all that yet, but some of this would build momentum, and you never know. You could all of a sudden, with all the orientation to Beltway 8 and 288, we named this thing, our project, Interpoint 288. I mean, with all the interface there, you don't have to steer this traffic through the Spectrum District. You could have all this go straight out to the frontage roads. So.
I mean, just to piggyback on what Pete has said, and just to kind of put my retail developer hat on, I do think that the corner that you guys are very focused on, which I think at some point will be a commercial corner. It's a challenging market right now, retail wise, and I'm sure you guys probably know. Just trying to get some traction on that corner. This is a strong tenant market. So if you have areas that tenants want to go to, they are in a position to go. I mean, the tenants they need stores. I mean, we are undersupplied as a retail market. That is a good thing. The challenging thing is that they only can pay so much rent. These retailers, they max out at a certain level, and the construction costs have gotten so extremely high over the last 3 years that even if you had a lineup of tenants that say, you know what, we kind of want to go here, and it might make sense, I only can pay this much rent. And then you start doing all the math, and with all the build outs, then all the infrastructure, it just doesn't pencil. And so if you can't economically pencil a deal, you don't have a deal. And so, again, it goes back to market. It's the market it's almost the best arbitrator. And the market would have spoken like the retail is here right now. It's not, and it might be later when costs come down and rents go up. But who knows when that is? So we're hoping that with this piece, we can somehow, monetize a property that we've owned for generations. We're not talking about years. We're talking about generations. And if it's not this, what is it? I mean, I've heard, well, we want it exciting. Well, what does that mean? If we can't do an exciting project, we can't, ever sell our property? It's a transitional property. It's in between this and that. Well, what does that mean? I mean, if it's, what is a transitional use? What is that use? I mean, this over here, y'all have a clear definition of what you want. And over here, you have a very clear definition of what you want. Where we are, it's like no man's land. It's like, and that leaves us in a position where we're just paying taxes forever. So I get emotional about this just because, I feel like we have a strong team, a strong group of landowners behind us that, we can do something for the city, we can do something for the community, we can add tax base, we can add jobs, and it's not going to harm your future projects. And I think we can all plan this out and make it happen.
Okay, so real quick, I want to inject before you go too much further. So we move forward. You do this. We have problems on the corner, and that retail wants to come there, but they don't like what's next door. You ready to collapse your buildings, or to get what we want? And I know the answer is no. I get that. We're wrestling with what this community wants and needs, and I get that. That is the last major corner coming into our city to develop. It's the last major piece. And I get the fact that the Lay family has owned a piece of property there for a long time. Beltway came in, other things happened there, and I get that. It is a transitional piece in our mind. What does that ultimately look like and feel like? That's what this is about. And so I want to be real careful. We have a right to know and have a feel for what our community to be. At the same time, we have to be responsive to the market and to landowner needs. That is not an easy needle to thread. It's not. But this council is up for trying to thread a needle. And so I get that. I will tell you, the worst thing that's on that corner is Bass Pro Shop. It's the absolute worst thing for that corner, because they control that corner more than we do. They control your land, not directly, because they control the land that goes around them. And we've got to work through that. We didn't do that. Prudential gave them that. Now Prudential's paying the price. They understand they've got a problem on their hands in that lease. So we've got to work through all of that. At the same time, there is traction on that corner. There is traction. So we've got to figure out how are we compatible between everything. And I want to make sure that we give our chance to get what's right for the city. And I'm not saying that what you're proposing is wrong. How do we coexist? I mean, the applicant has said there are ways in Frisco, Alliance, and Sugar Land that we can coexist. I want to see examples of that, where it's Class A all the way around. I want to see where that all happens. I've spent a fair amount of time in Sugar Land the last couple of weeks looking at projects. So if that's what we're talking, I want to see that. And so we're just trying to give the opportunity to do that. With that, I know I had other council members that had comments. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. No, I think this is an important corner. I think we've got to be aware of the transition from the Bass Pro Spectrum area to Lower Kirby. I don't know if this is the absolute perfect use, but it's the one in front of us. So I don't know. I'm still struggling. If you force me for an answer, it'd be to Councilman Perez's point. It'd probably be a cheap no at this point, but not saying that I couldn't get there.
Mr. Patel.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm probably with Councilmember Carbone. I think I can get there, but I would like to know who the tenants are. I mean, you keep talking about jobs. I don't have access. They control our computers here. I would show you right on Airport Boulevard and 288. I believe it's a company called TAS Energy. Have you heard of them? As you drive along 288, all I see in their parking lot is just equipment now. Yeah. It's kind of disappointing because there's a beautiful facility, tilt wall, beautiful facility. So I think my concern would be that you talk about jobs and I'm all for it. I think most of the council would say yes. If it's a medical company, I guarantee you can get it done. But we would want to know which medical company. So I think that's my hurdle, trying to get over it. I'm sure the product you're going to put in there is going to be fantastic. The concern I have is I don't want to say yes to you and that product sit there and then all of a sudden, once it's built, like the mayor said, you're not going to tear it down. So you may get desperate in 3 or 4 years, because I do see along the Beltway, you're right, there's a lot of tilt wall going up, but I also see a lot of it that's empty. And my fear is eventually it's on the Houston side. I can't control that. What I can control is Pearland. And so I just don't want, eventually, you know as well as we do, they want a return on their investment. So in 3 years, you're going to say, well, we got a tenant, put it in, if the market goes back down. So that's my fear. And I think council's fear is probably that. But I think if you do have a tenant that you believe, hey, we'll eat up $150,000, heck, I'll guarantee you'll probably get our EDC to fund it, right? So we're not saying no completely. All we're saying is I think we need more information. I think we would like to know it's not a spec building. That's my concern.
Ms. Kate, wrap up.
Yeah, to be clear, I didn't say no. I just said I wasn't excited about how the little picture I could see from over here looked. I would like for it to be aesthetic. You know what I'm trying to say, the word aesthetically pleasing, since it's right there on the main corridor. I never said no, just to be clear.
Mayor, if I could for a second. Trent Perez, 12621 Suite 200, Houston, Texas, 77035. I think what I'm hearing, and maybe just to consolidate everything, we do hear concerns. Obviously, we predicted that. We had some understandings of the history of the tract. It's challenged on both ends. Market wants it to be industrial. To provide a market study to show where retail is. We could certainly give you some information on that. I can tell you with our development end, we're not doing a whole lot of retail, but we're doing a lot of industrial. And most of it's getting occupied before it's done. That's not necessarily a burden for y'all, but we're just saying that it's a challenge to get retail on this tract. It's very similar, in my opinion, to where Bailey Road at 35 was when it was zoned industrial. And we tried very hard to get industrial there, but it wouldn't come. And I personally tried to court a lot of developers to go in there, and ultimately we had to acquiesce and say single-family residential is the best use because that's what's coming. And we've got a high-quality development there. It's going to be a great neighborhood. We're going to have great houses there. And ultimately, that was just the fit. I'm not advocating that it has to be industrial. I think I hear from council and at least a couple of P&Z members is you're not opposed to it. But there would be, y'all would need something more to be able to get comfortable with the uses. If that's generally the tenor of council, that gives us enough, and I don't speak for the owner per se, but that gives us enough for us to want to come back. If we could have some measure of what it is that y'all are looking for, so we're not flying in blind, I think we can find a potentiality of some transitional feel to the property, but with the uses that we need in order to fit the tenant base that they serve, and potentially find maybe a happy medium. If it doesn't meet the pro forma, then we can certainly walk away. Or if we present something that just isn't in favor with what y'all want to look for the property, certainly y'all can say no.
Trent, I'll give you some feedback on that, because I think what you're hearing, again, I think if we can have a little bit of both, the industrial user, I think, is fine, as long as it doesn't detract and take away from the greenfield next door. And so, I mean, Peter, mentioned how do we do this mini transition, if you will, right there on Promenade Shops. I think if you're Bass Pro and you're that area over there, you don't want to look and see a white wall. Heaven forbid you see nothing but doors with trailers in it, right? And you're trying to attract high quality, mixed use development next door. So I don't know what that looks like, but I think the picture is worth 1,000 words. And so how does this mini transition from the Bass Pro and that greenfield into that look? What is the feel? Is there a type of transition that can work there? Because again, if one's going to come in front of the other, I don't want to leave the other going from a Class A site to a C, because that's all that's left.
Totally understood.
And I think likewise, if we did have Class A on the Bass Pro, I think we might be talking something different on this track. So
would it be fair to say y'all would be open to the idea of us opening up the uses on this property to what's allowed in the LNR in districts A, B, and C? If we could find a way to make this a transitional piece, work with the aesthetics so that it kind of fits between Ingershausen and Bass Pro, and play with that idea a little bit, maybe come back to staff and say, do you feel like this is the tenor of what council and P&Z is working with? At least, I mean, the biggest hurdle for us is the uses. If we can get some idea, hey, we can be open to the uses, we just got to play with the pro forma and see what we can survive on the aesthetic piece. I think that gives us some idea of the direction we need to go.
What are those uses again? What are those uses again?
It's keeping A, B, and C in the chart. So Vance, can you answer?
And I would exclude Mitsubishi since that was certainly a different type of product. Dover and Mitsubishi were a different type of product.
I would agree. So Vance, you want to?
So essentially, good evening, everybody, Commissioner and members of P&Z, Mayor, member of council. So essentially, it would be manufacturing, warehouses, and distribution would be allowed.
Along with what's already allowed today. You're opening it up to allow those, but you're not restricting what's allowed today, is what I'm hearing Mr. Perez say.
Yes, sir. And just to add on, but when it comes down to this particular use and the transitional of this site, the Baytown example, I have family in Baytown. I frequent that area often. I would encourage council to maybe even give some feedback on a 700-foot rectangle on the highway, because I think that's what it is.
The project that I'm referencing is a 2-building, 750,000 square foot project that's at 146 and was it 1605? The northeast corner. It just went under construction recently.
Yeah, and just when it comes down to this being that gateway entry into our community and them being able to hit their pro forma when it comes to square footage and not having that size building on Beltway 8, I think that's going to be difficult. And just, again, that's my 2 cents on that particular part of it.
Okay. There's some direction. Any other feedback from staff? P&Z? Okay. Council? All right. With that, I'm going to close this workshop and move to adjournment at 5:36.